Well, two crazy games to keep tabs on with the 3 p.m. local time kickoffs in the Premier League. Both had exactly the same scorelines, but how they got there, they were very different. Mark Donaldson, Janusz Mihalik, Luis Miguel Echegaray. Chelsea winning 4-2 against Brighton. Arsenal winning 4-2 against Leicester. Janusz, let's start at the bridge with the Cole Palmer show. 4 goals in 20 minutes. Absolutely unstoppable, but extremely clinical Cole Palmer at Stamford Bridge. What did you make of Chelsea's overall performance today?
All I can tell you is that Chelsea are back. They're back on track. I don't know how far that's going to take them, but, you can see that all the noise that we've heard off the pitch, Enzo Maresca has been able to put structure to this team, structure on the pitch, and that's what's important to him, right? In a lot of the cases, he has very little say. He's got a ton of players that he had to deal with. He struggled with that initially by his own account as well, and as we've seen as of late, that structure, a little bit of discipline, although I think you can obviously question that a little bit today. We'll probably get to it later. But in terms of going forward, how the team wants to play, how the team wants to entertain, how the team is capable of creating a lot of chances and scoring goals, I think that's important. And I think if you're a Chelsea fan or even people like us, we didn't see that coming maybe before the season, but it is absolutely tremendous to watch. And by the way, the game started terribly for them, and I think Brighton scored deservedly. But after that, it was just a one-man show. We are talking about Cole Palmer, of course, a special player.
He's such a talent, LME. A penalty in there, a brilliant free kick, and goals from open play. And he'll probably say that it was a great day, but it could have been better because he scored 4 in 20 minutes and didn't score any more. How important is he to what Chelsea do? There's a lot of talk about all these signings. That's fine. That's just noise to him. He's the one that makes them tick, isn't he?
He is absolutely the one that makes them tick. And I echo everything Janusz was saying about Chelsea. They're back, and I'm very surprised, pleasantly surprised under what Enzo Maresca is doing. And to answer your question about Cole Palmer, to me at this point, 6 goals, 4 assists. He could have scored a few more goals today. The way that he scores, the way that he helps Chelsea penetrate, because they are a good Zilla. Chelsea have the most goals so far in the Premier League right now. They've scored 10 goals away from home. They've never done that in the Premier League at this stage of this campaign. You have to go back to the 20s to get that record. And Cole Palmer is the heart, the beating drum of everything. He, in my opinion, at this moment, is the best player in the Premier League. And he's not even a striker. Right? It's amazing. Our producer, Sam, mentioned the stat here. 3 Premier League hat-tricks already, the most by a Chelsea player in the Premier League alongside Jamie Floyd, Hasselbank, Didier Drogba, and Frank Lampard. That's quite an accompaniment to be there. So to me, Cole Palmer is amazing. But it's not even just about him. Maresca has created such a counter-attacking machine with Noni Madueke now that's doing way more than just doing things in fragments. Nico Jackson, by the way, the partnership that he has with Cole Palmer as well. And then you have Pedro Neto that can contribute. Joao Felix, of course. There's so much talent here. And yes, it's early in the season. And yes, Robert Sanchez made a few mistakes today, and they do concede goals. But this is a very scary Chelsea team. And I say this in a good way, an arrogant Chelsea team. I like to see them go forward like with everything that they have. And Cole Palmer is the absolute engine that drives everything.
Look, they're great to watch, right? But the goalkeeper's not good enough. And they've got a lot of goalkeepers. This is a goalkeeper who has started his season as first choice, but he wasn't first choice at Brighton. That's why they let him go. And they signed Philip Jurgensen, Chelsea. They've got another few goalkeepers on the books. Can they keep going with Robert Sanchez? Because, yeah, they can score goals, but you want to be in a position to know that if you score 1, that's going to be enough. Is Robert Sanchez the answer, Janusz?
He may be. I don't think, he started the season relatively. There's been always questions about him, right? But he was okay. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is, again, the way this game was played, because we can all talk about entertainment. We can talk about goals, right? Cole Palmer could have had 6 or 7. Nico Jackson, and I want to come back to him maybe because I don't see him as the player. I would question him more than other people, which may be a surprise to some. But anyway, I remember there's a reason why Chelsea conceded with 63 goals last season, right? Because of the transition game and the transitional defense. And today, I mean, you can win it today, but it was actually something that Enzo Maresca will worry about, right? Remember last season, it was the defensive transition for Chelsea. I mean, teams were able to drive through Chelsea as if they weren't there. And that was the case for almost the entire game, even when they were losing. I mean, so I think as much as we said that Caicedo was excellent in the last game and he's getting better a little bit, today, once again, I think, if you look at Brighton, they had so many chances. So that to me is an issue. That to me is a worry. Now, could they've used a better goalkeeper? Absolutely. Could they have, if they had Peter Cech, would that make a difference? Sure. So they have plenty of them, as you mentioned. They need to continue to look for it. But I don't know, even with the two mistakes today, there are probably other things that I would like to fix to make Chelsea better. And they are better, as I've mentioned already. Nico Jackson's one of them.
Look, they've won 4-2, and it seems as though we're barking up the wrong tree when we're looking at the kind of defensive deficiencies and the goalkeeper. When they've scored 4, they could have scored a lot more, and they've been brilliant to watch this season. But LME Janusz said something right at the start. Chelsea are back, okay? Now, they're in contention. What are they in contention for? Well, right now, they're in contention for a top 4 spot. And then we'll see how the season goes. But when you've got Enzo and when you've got Caicedo in there, are you expecting a little bit more protection? Because I'm going to go back to the last thing I said in the question to Janusz. This is a team that want to score 1 goal and know that that is going to be enough going forward, because not every game is going to be like this one.
So here's what I'll say. I agree. I think Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez can sometimes can be counterproductive, specifically in this kind of Maresca system. But if you watch Chelsea play, what happens is, especially when the other team has the ball in their own box, they put like 5 or 6 just to try and push. So when they lose that ball, there are massive holes in the midfield. And I think that's more to do with the strategy of Enzo Maresca as opposed to the fact that they have Enzo and Moises Caicedo. The mistakes today as well, we go back to Robert Sanchez and your original question, because they were very silly mistakes. And I think that Maresca is probably going to have to think to himself, depending on the opponent, do I always want to play from the back? Do I want to be more direct? But defensive transition is a thing, because when they do push so much forward and then they lose it, there are massive holes in the middle. And that's where Caicedo and Enzo come in. Now, having said all of that, I honestly think that Chelsea are in this philosophy, and we'll see how they continue to go, but they're in this philosophy of saying, you score 2, we'll score 4. You score 3, we'll score 5. So I think Maresca is more concerned with the overconfidence and arrogance of the offensive setup as opposed to conceding goals. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't want to defend. He has to protect that, especially when you have people like Cucurella going forward. I get that. But I think that at this moment, because of the offensive weapons that they have, they're quite comfortable trying to just keep going with this strategy. I do think that they need to do things. It's still very early in the season. They're a very young team, but at the very least, they have an offensive identity, which is something that we didn't say last year. They're
good enough for top 4, Janusz, aren't they?
Maybe, but as much as I like to see, teams scoring goals and building the confidence of going forward and the entertainment, which I've mentioned, I like that. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to go away. But I think that Enzo Maresca, I hope, would be the first one to tell you that in order to win something, to get back where Chelsea want to be, you got to control games. There was no, I mean, I don't know what you could control, but when you were winning 3-1, 4-2, and the opposition like Brighton still goes forward, you can say, well, 1-off. But I think that's still missing, because in transition, as we both agree with LME, that was an issue, in seasons past. Today, it was an issue, but I would expect, for example, somebody having on a team a player like Cole Palmer, which can do that, and Enzo Fernandez in particular, you asked of them to control the game when it's 3-1, 4-2, right? Possession. I mean, we've talked about Cole Palmer and the goals, but there's a player that once you give him the ball, he's not losing it, right? So now you have to find a way to have the moments of possession, the moments of slowing the game down, and that's where Cole Palmer will be willing to do that. I expect a lot more from Enzo Fernandez. I've been a massive fan again, but he's been disappointing me for a long, long time. Today, good going forward. As we mentioned, those moments, not so much. And I think that's a worry. Now, I think you ought to be happy where they are and what they're doing. We've said as much, but if I don't see that, I don't see Chelsea certainly not winning, not Premier League, I suppose in the Cups, maybe. Top 4 is possible, but I've yet to see that control of the game for Chelsea.
Yeah, you can see the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen, and it has the Arsenal game ahead of the Chelsea game, which is understandable. And we want to talk in depth about Arsenal now. But Cole Palmer did what has never been done by a Chelsea player before and score 4 goals in just 20 minutes. A phenomenal achievement. Chelsea get the win over Brighton. Now, what about this one? Arsenal 2-0 up and cruising. Then it was 2-2. James Justin, who, by the way, brought in double Arsenal defence on his Fantasy Premier League wildcard. He benched himself. So not only does he lose his points for scoring twice, but he's ruined his defence by scoring twice against the 2 Arsenal players that he brought in. But that's fantasy. It's not real life. This was an Arsenal 2-0 up and cruising. Won by 2 goals, Janusz. That doesn't really tell the full story, though, does it? How big a win is this for the Gunners? And what does it say, once again, about the late show under Mikel Arteta?
This team, Arsenal, is learning how to suffer and win. And that's big for me, right? It's easy to look for faults in this performance. I don't really know how to, especially because they saw it through. Because at first, I saw a team that looked worthy of champions, right, in the first half. I mean, absolute control. I think they completed like 93 or 95% for the 94% of the passes. And then after that, it's, I wrote it down. This is how you lose the Premier League, when it was 2-2, but for no particular reason whatsoever, rather than sloppiness. And they saw it through. I mean, still absolutely dominated. I think, the set piece right after halftime. Okay. I mean, Arsenal should know better, right? Because they score plenty of set pieces themselves. So very sloppy in the second half, but, I'm not a bias here, but I'm glad they won it, because I wouldn't have wanted to explain to everybody why they lost it, because there was absolutely zero reason for that, because that was, to me, a total domination. And as I said, if suffering was the case against Manchester City with 10 men and getting it done, which, by the way they did it, they had it done, I have zero problems with that. Today, it kind of, if I were Arteta, it would even put more smile on my faces, because that's another different way of showing the character and spine.
Yeah, I mean, the character's the perfect word that Janusz has used, LME. It took me back to a goal by Reece Nelson, like in the 800th minute of stoppage time back in the day. But good teams find a way, and Arsenal did. How did they avoid being in that position? The second goal's a worldie from James Justin, but the first one's